Hey, good morning everyone, Trackman 44 here. Let's take a few minutes today and go down memory lane. Might be a memory lane for some of you guys that had some old timers that had some of the first heating systems, around. See if you can remember some of this stuff from Grandma and Grandpa's house. Now this, of course, probably would not have been in Grandpa or Grandma's house, but this is a very old, one of the first generation thermostat guards that you would see in a commercial property, a doctor's office or an office building or whatever, where you didn't want people tampering with them. Nowadays they're all plastic and everything. You can stick a butter knife in. You can just kind of pry them this way or that. You sure can't do it with this guy right here. Now this is a two-piece guard. Of course there's the base behind it that you would actually attach to the wall, and this guard here would go right on top of it. Now this is cast iron. That thing probably weighs 2.5 pounds. But at any rate, that was made specifically for this particular thermostat right here, and this is a Minneapolis Honeywell regulator company. Before it just became plain Honeywell, it was the Minneapolis Honeywell regulator company. And so this is not anywhere near the first generation at all, but it is definitely an old one. And if you see here, you don't see any kind of a dial, but you can actually see the adjustment or the temperature settings inside this window here. Now the cool thing is you'd have to go through a rigmarole in order to figure out what the process is to open this up once you were to get the cover off, if you were able to do that. So once you get into it, you can see that this here is accessible by a screwdriver. The set point right here is accessible by a screwdriver to screw it up and down to increase or decrease the temperature setting. And if you notice, that little screwdriver slot is perfectly not in alignment with any of these slots on top, because they knew that the sneaky people in the offices, that we all know who they are, you know what I mean? They couldn't get in there. They'd have to go to this trouble, and most people didn't have the tools or the wherewithal to take these things apart. But this is actually really a pretty cool thing. Like I said, that was very early, but it was primarily a commercial thermostat, or in a commercial application. Now, if you want to look at this one here, now this is actually a clock thermostat. It would actually, based on the time of day and your settings, it would actually turn a system on or off, typically a heating only system. Now there's a couple of dials and a couple of things missing on this. I was been a little rough with this over time, but this is a 24 volt clock, and the clock motor itself still works. And this thing here is probably 100 years old. I'd have to get back onto the Minneapolis Honeywell and try to trace it out, and I'm not going to do that. But at any rate, that's just another cool venture into the automatic mechanization. If you look underneath this clock now, if I pop this down, here you can see your adjustments down here. There's your low temperature and high temperature settings. And of course back here on the back side is a faster and a slower adjustment speed for the clock, if it was run a little bit behind schedule or run a little bit ahead of schedule. And if you look on the back here, you can't see it, but the installing contractor or the installing service tech back in October of 1929 scratched 1029 on the back of this thing. So this is a little bit less than 100 years old. Then you come on up into the 50s and you get into the actual clock thermostat. This is a heating only thermostat, but it's a clock thermostat that was another Minneapolis Honeywell, and it predated Chronotherm, the Honeywell Chronotherm's thermostats. But this is really cool. I actually had this one running too, 24 volts, runs just absolutely fine. The set points will click on and off as you want to do them. And this thing here is from probably the 1950s, mid-50s or something like that. And it says right here, Honeywell electric clock thermostat, and it shows the comfort range between 70 and 80 degrees. Isn't that cool? The evolution of those guys, they went on into a mechanical clock and everything, and they were really kind of cool. But then beyond that, then you got into your electronics or your digital clocks. And this here's a perfect example right here of a 24 volt electronic clock thermostat. And this is a Chronotherm. Really modern. Listen here, we installed these things by the dozens back in, I don't know, in the 1970s or so. And I've got a whole box of these yet. I did a school here about 15 or 20 years ago, and I want to say 93 units I pulled out. And of those 93 units, I got about 75 of these clock thermostats, and the rest of them were White Rogers or Robert Shaw, but all comparable in setback capability to these guys right here. Now we've got one F95 White Rogers, one F97 5-day programmable, 7-day programmable, whatever. But in the interim, of course, we had the standard T87F Honeywell round thermostat. This could be a heating only stat like it is here with just a heating only sub base, 2 terminals, or you put the Q539 sub base on the wall and add this to the sub base, and it would convert the heating only thermostat to a selected heating or cooling with heating and cooling set points both. So yeah, everybody remembers these round guys. There's probably a million of them out there still running. Hell, probably 10 million of them still out there running to this day and time. Now, being as how we're going down memory lane with old heating parts, probably up into probably the 1940s or so, you had a lot of coal-fired furnaces and everything, and you had a lot of gravity systems. That was natural gas, that was coal. Some of them actually still burned wood, farther out into the country. But then you came into the automatic heating devices where they had a heat exchanger and blowers and everything, and they all worked automatically and all that stuff. And let's take a look at some of the brands that some of you guys may remember. First thing, you can see a nice, neat little Winkler. Has the model number and everything. The serial number is supposed to be stamped in whenever the fella installs it, but that guy did not do it. And you can also see another Winkler here that's actually a little bit nicer, a little bit neater. I don't know which one is older. The Winkler they were actually coal stokers, coal furnaces, and then they became oil, really big into oil, as I remember. Okay, now there's a company called Day and Night that is also part of the Bryant Corporation, or it's called Bryant Day, Night, and Payne Corporation, which is now a division of Carrier Corporation. So that's Bryant, and these are all metallic tags. They're stamped aluminum. Here's one that's U.S. Airco. This thing here weighs about 12 ounces, nice and thick, 3/8 inches thick. U.S. Airco. That's pretty cool. And here in Red Bud, Illinois, we had a company called American Furnace. American Furnace is shortened to AFCO for AFCO Comfort Maker. And you can see right here, American Furnace. Here's two different styles. See how this one here actually says AFCO Comfort Maker, and then this one here says American Furnace. American Furnace was the actual older, and then AFCO Comfort Maker was the newer version, and then that actually turned into Singer Corporation, and now I believe it's a portion of Inner City Products. But I could be mistaken. I've been out of the field for a while. Okay, here's a brand that you guys may recognize. Here's the Armstrong, if we missed that Armstrong before. Here's a Weil McLean boiler. And of course, like I said, these are all metal. International, believe it or not, International was into to furnaces and air conditioners back in the 50s and 60s. And speaking of International, take a look here. Here's Chrysler Air Temp. How many of you guys are familiar with the Chrysler Air Temp brand of air conditioning? This is a very nice heavy. And of course, Carrier's always got their Carrier always has a prominent tag. It says liquid chiller. This is off of a chiller, of course. And I actually have the framework for this chiller that I actually tore out. That's the framework I actually cut it down, and that's the framework for my Frankenblaster sandblaster. That's how long ago that, and I tore that out in 1982, if I remember correctly. Here's another Carrier condensing unit. This is a commercial condensing unit, typical tag. It's very thick. It's 3/16 thick. And here's a real neat one here. This here was more than likely an air handler, but you can see Carrier, just as plain as day. It's 1/4 of an inch thick. It's really nice. And they actually had holes just drilled right in, and you would just pop these things right in through, just like chrome on a car. They had little retainers just popped right in. Okay. Now look, everybody knows Lennox. Good old Dave Lennox. This is one from back in the day. This is typical of the furnaces. These furnaces here had a very noticeable color, a kind of a burgundy and tan color. Another Lennox. Again, stamped aluminum, just probably a decade or so different. And here's another older Lennox, which is actually farmed pewter or pot metal or whatever you want to call it, but it's metallic, it's not plastic. And just like everything else gets cheapened up this day and time, here's what we got now. We have plastic tags that break and pop off and melt and everything. Here's a Heil Quaker Corporation right here. As with everything else, they cheapen up everything. The furnaces and the air conditioners are manufactured so much more efficiently, which is a nicer way of saying that they're more cheaply built. They definitely are more efficient, there's no doubt about it, but that efficiency comes with a cost. But at any rate, that's what I was going for, is the fact that these things are so substantially built back in the day, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and in some cases the 20s, you know what I mean, and before. And nowadays we're relegated to plastic tags, and a lot of them now just have nothing but a plastic sticker that sticks on the air conditioner or the furnace or whatever. And if it happens to be outside, the sun, the UV rays just deteriorate those stickers, and you're at a loss for a model and serial number unless you're able to find it inside on some bookwork or on a wiring diagram, hopefully, that's not been gotten wet and rotted away on the inside of the unit, you know what I mean? So at any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and if that's the end of this one here, that's about all I got to say for it, and this is TractorMan 44. I'm out of here. However, if this isn't the end to it, we got something really special I was going to show you next.